Hello and welcome back to DevOps Fundamentals from SkillSpeed. This is lesson 2 of section 1 in which we are going to discuss about DevOps and DevOps tools. And in this particular video, we are going to discuss about why DevOps. So before we go ahead with the DevOps benefits and things like that, let's take a look at some of the pre-DevOps scenarios, what exactly used to happen when DevOps was not there in the picture. So development teams used to write codes for months and months before it was actually being released. And code, once written, was merged by developers in order to release it. And merging of code, it remained a very expensive task in terms of effort, complexity, and time. In fact, I remember reading one article in which it was mentioned that if you, let's say, divide the developer's time in 100%, about 20 to 25% time was spent in actual writing of code, and more than 75 to 80% time was spent in making sure that the code has been merged properly and the integration has been done properly. So you can understand the complexity and the amount of effort it used to go into the code merging and integration. And once the code merging was successful, it will go for the testing team, and which actually would then test the code for any kind of bugs or any kind of problems within the code. Once testing was successful, development teams and the testing teams would wait for release cycles to put the code into production with the help of operations team. Now, this wait time could be anywhere between 15 days to a couple of months. So this was in fact one of the major reasons why DevOps came into picture, the lead time before the code goes successfully into production. So this was one of the major reasons why DevOps came into picture, because the lead time was one of the major time-consuming tasks. Though you have the code ready, you have tested your code, it cannot go to the production machines because of the release cycle and the time you need to wait for the actual production deployment. And till the time it has not gone into production, the code is not getting benefited. It's not going to the end users. So the turnaround time or the time to market was pretty long. And of course, once it has gone into the production machines and it has been successfully deployed over there, expected without any problems, we are expecting that. Then it was monitored and maintained over a period of time for any kind of problems or any kind of, then application support and production support will come into picture. The predominant model or the predominant framework which was followed was a waterfall model. And this is how it used to look like. You had a number of steps, start right from the requirement gathering steps where the developers will meet the customers, and they will discuss over a couple of meetings what exactly is the requirement. They will create a document, they will prepare the use cases. Then it will go into the design phase where the software architects will come into picture. They will design the software architecture and the data flow and the workflow and things like that. And they will map these stakeholders who has got what role to play. For example, the DB guys, the networkings, the UI designers, and the likes. And then the actual construction and the implementation of the software will start. Then the construction of the software, the designing of the software, the actual coding, and then all sorts of data storage, retrieval, all those things. Once everything is done, it will go through some testing phases and all sorts of unit testing and integration testing, regression testing, smoke tests, all those things will come into picture over here. Once everything is done and the testing phase is complete, it will go into the installation phase and the verification phase at the end users wherever it is supposed to be deployed. It can be on premise inside the company, or it can be at the actual end user's location. So installation and then finally testing and further debugging, because one of the major reasons, one of the major problems which we used to face was that the environment what we have at the development site or at the company, the software company who's developing the software, It's very different from the environment which is there at the actual end user. And that is the reason a lot of times, a lot of testing and debugging was needed even after the installation is done or the deployment is done at the end user level. Once everything is done, once let's say testing and debugging is fine and the software is stable now, it is being utilized and the end users are now using the software, then the maintenance part will come into picture. Occasional errors, any kind of optimizations required. A lot of times you have to train the end users as well to how to use the software and things like that. So this was a typical waterfall development model, which was predominant in the early and the late 90s, and somewhere around early 2000s, where the agile model came into picture, which actually replaced successfully waterfall model. And that is where, if you speak about the typical turnaround time for the waterfall model, 6 months to deploy a software was a pretty fast speed. It was pretty fast to deliver the software in if you are delivering it within 6 months, or maybe let's say 6 to 9 months time frame, which was completely unacceptable when you went to the agile model, which was completely different. We'll talk about that a little later. So, what were the problems faced during this waterfall model and the pre-DevOps era, if you want to call it that way? So, as we spoke, the deployment frequency was very less. So, as we spoke, 6 months to 9 months turnaround time was very reasonable and acceptable fast speed for software deployments and delivery. Release of codes were big events. This was the happening time, no matter what was the frequency, whether it is monthly or quarterly or whatever. It was a happening time. People will be there in office, and staying overnight in office was not a big deal at all. And because of the problems, all the stakeholders will be there. It was more like happening. People are moving around when the releases are happening. Time to market, as we spoke, it was huge. Now, from the conceptual phase when the software is being asked and the requirement gathering till the time it is being deployed at the user end, the typical turnaround time was 6 to 9 months, which was huge. Today, it is completely unacceptable. Development and operations team working in their own space without giving much attention to each other's objectives. Now, this was one of the major reasons, once again, why DevOps came into picture, because developers are working in their own world, operations team are working in their own world. Each of them are not aware of the other person's problems and the challenges which they face, because of which it was not very conducive environment for the end-to-end release of the software delivery. And complex software delivery with slower problem resolutions rate. This was again because of the fourth point which we discussed, because there was no clear-cut, collaboration between the development and operations folks. So if there was a problem, it was always a blame game. Developers will say it is the problem because of the production machines, and operations will say the problem is because of the developer's code, and it will go on and on. The blame game was the major reason why there was, most of the times it was more like a it was more like a fast fix approach rather than the actual resolution of the problem and reaching the root cause. So that is where, because of these problems, all these problems combined, DevOps came into picture. Gradually, people realized that it has to change. What is going on, it's not good for the software industry overall, and we have to change the approach how we what we take for the software delivery, and that is where DevOps was born. And one of the biggest benefits of DevOps is that it breaks the silos between development teams and operations teams and testing teams as well, because these are the three major pillars of IT software delivery. And all these three teams, they have their own set of objectives and challenges and processes. So what DevOps does, it makes them work towards a common objective and simultaneously maintaining the balance between stability and new feature releases. Now, again, the problem is obvious, because when you talk about the development and the operations side, the major goal of the developers is to have the agility. They want to release the software, they want to release the new features, right? And the new features and the changes would mean instability, which is completely against what operations guys want. They want things to be stable. They don't want to mess with things if things are going smoothly, right? Which is completely opposite to what developers do, right? Developers are paid to make changes, whereas operations guys are paid to make sure that the environment is stable, right? That was a big gap between these two extremes of IT software delivery, and that is what we call as silos. So if we talk about the individual points, if you want to kind of summarize what are the benefits of DevOps. So of course, first one is the most important advantage is improving the deployment frequency. We spoke about 6 to 9 months being the normal turnaround time for software delivery. Now today, if you speak, we have companies who are delivering softwares on a regular basis. When I say regular, I'm talking about not only weekly, I'm talking about daily, multiple times in a week, multiple times in a day. In fact, people are releasing their softwares. These are, of course, very small incremental changes. However, there are production releases happening. Faster delivery of features. Again, it's a similar similar point what we have discussed in the first one. So because deployment frequency has increased, so you can release your features or you can deliver your features at a very faster pace. And because you can deliver the features faster, you achieve faster time to market, which is a killer in IT industry. Right? I mean, I've always heard this saying, in IT industry, it's not the big fish which eats the small fish. It's the fast one which eats the small fish. Right? So that is something which is very important to understand. And if you look around in the IT industry, the companies who are highly successful, companies like Google or Facebook or Amazon or Netflix, these are the companies who have been releasing softwares at an amazingly fast pace. I mean, it's almost maddening at times how fast they can release the softwares. I mean, a couple of thousands releases in a single day or week. It's not a joke. And of course, once you have things smooth and streamlined, the blame game stops. The blame game is less. And since the blame game is less, you have more proactive time and more time to improve upon the product instead of fix and maintenance. You're not in the firefighting mode. You're not like, troubleshooting things. You're not always busy bringing things back up to normal. Things are working up and running fine. What you are doing now, you are working towards the improvement, working towards the optimization of things. So that's a real gain in terms of productivity of your time. And yes, you have the more stable operating environment because you have less number of failures. You have more smooth and streamlined operations. So operation environment is obviously much more stable than it was before. So that's some of the benefits of DevOps, which we have spoken in this video. We will continue to talk about DevOps benefits and processes and methodologies. That's it for this video, and thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.